Okay, thank you. Yes, we are going to speak about soybean cropping in Sweden. And I work at a research institute called RISE, Research Institute Sweden in Uppsala. Is that something that, yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Nii et tere ka minu poolt, mul on väga hea meel täna siin olla ja teil on võimalik siis tõlke kaudu kuulda minu ettekannet eesti keeles, aga proovin ka aeglaselt rääkida. Kindlasti kui on küsimusi, siis esitage neid. Ja täna siis räägin sojakasvatusest Rootsis ja mina töötan Rootsi ettevõttes Riise.
Yeah. Yes, can we actually grow soya beans in Sweden? This is my intelligent cat at home thinking about these questions. And I will directly say, yes, we can. This is actually a leaflet from 1947 describing soybean growing on the island of Öland in the Baltic Sea, close to the Swedish coast.
Siin näete te ühte lehte, mis tutvustab sojaubade kasvatamist Ölandi saarel Läänemeres 47. aastal.
And here they speak about a yield of about 1,200 kilograms per hectare.
Siin lehtehel räägitakse, et saak on 1250 kilogrammi hektari kohta.
And they also say that it was seeded on May 5th using a row distance of 45 centimeter. And they have a harvest on September 12.
Öeldakse ka, et siin, et soja külvati 5. mail, reavahega 45 sentimeetrit ja see koristati 12. septembril.
And yes, this was, we can take this to previous. So knowing that they could actually succeed with soybeans already in 1947, I will say that yes, we can grow soybeans in Sweden.
Selle teadmisega, et juba 47. aastal oli sojaubade kasvatamine võimalik Rootsis, oleks minu kindel vastus jah, see on võimalik Rootsis.
But there are some areas, the islands of Öland and Gotland, in the south part of Sweden, the provinces of Scania, Blekinge, and also central Sweden, Östergötland, Västergötland. I will show you on a map too where these places are. There I would say that we can quite successfully grow soybeans.
Kõige edukamalt on võimalik sojaube kasvatada lõuna- ja keskosas Rootsis, näiteks siis Ölandi saarel, Gotlandil ja teistes piirkondades, mida me kohe kaardime ette.
And we also know that the local conditions and the skills of the farmer is very, very important. That is, that there is a thin line between success and failure.
Väga olulised on ka kohalikud tingimused ja farmeri oskused ja see piir edu ja edu puudumise vahel on väga kitsas.
Yes. And we also know that some places and some farmers, soya has been a complete failure, mainly due to animals, doves, pigeons, different blackbirds eating the seeds and the germinated sprouts.
Samuti teame me, et mõnedes piirkondades ja mõnedel kasvatajatel ei ole olnud edu soja kasvatamisel, eelkõige erinevate loomade poolt põhjustatud kahjustuste tõttu, eelkõige lindude, näiteks tuvide tõttu, kes siis söövad ära idanenud seemned. Need to eat the doves then.
Yes, exactly. Yes. That could be a good idea. Our challenge, and I suppose you have the same here in Estonia, is too cold climate, too long days for seed production, too short season for maturity. So, I mean, we all know the problems, so to speak.
Meie väljakutsed on tõenäoliselt üsna sarnased teie omadele siin Eestis. Need on siis kliima on liiga külm, päevad on liiga pikad, et saaks seemneid toota ja küpsemiseks on pisikene aeg. Nii et me kõik teame, millised väljakutsed on olemas.
And if you just look into where we have been doing these experiments, this is the island of Öland and Gotland, area of Scania. We have here is Blekinge, this part, and then Västergötland and Östergötland are here. So it's about the average of Latvia, something like that, in Lithuania.
Siin kaardil te näete siis neid kohti, kus me oleme katseid läbi viinud ja need on, nagu te näete, umbes samal laiuskraadil nagu Läti ja Leedu.
But we have also had at least some trials here, which is on latitude 59 roughly with good success.
Aga meil on olnud ka edukaid katseid 59. laiuskraadil, mis on siis Eestiga samal tasandil.
But let's go back to these elderly experiences with the varieties Fiskeby 5 and Treff.
Aga vaatame siis neid vanu katseid, mis tehti sortidega Fiskeby 5 ja Treff.
Yes, and in the 1970s they had a surprisingly high yield actually, higher yields than I have obtained with the modern varieties.
1970. aastatel saavutati väga kõrge saagikus, isegi kõrgem kui mina olen näinud tänapäevaste sortidega.
And unfortunately, these cultivars are not available on the market today. Home gardening, yes, but not for commercial big-scale production.
Kahjuks ei ole võimalik neid sorte tänapäeval enam turult kätte saada selleks, et neid suurtootmisse lasta. Neid on võimalik ainult väiketootmiseks oma aias osta.
But they should, especially this Fiskeby 5, Fiskeby 5, should be very interesting for breeding of new varieties because it's very, very early.
Aga Fiskeby 5 oleks väga hea sort, millest uusi sorte välja aretada, sest see on selline varajane edukas sort.
And we can just see some yields from average yield from the 1970 to 1977. And here we see that the yield, kilograms per hectare, could be as high as 1,800 kilograms per hectare.
Siin te näete saagikuse näitajaid aastatel 70–77 ja nagu te näete Fiskeby 5 puhul võib saagikus olla isegi 1845 kilo hektari kohta.
And we also see that the days between seeding until a mature plant could be as short as 118 days.
Samuti on näha, et külvamise ja taime küpsemise vaheline periood võib olla kõigest 118 päeva.
And we have a very low crop density. This is the number of plants per square meter. And I would say that it's roughly half the amount of plants that we today generally recommend.
Samuti on taimede tihedus väga väike. See on kõigest 36 taime ruutmeetri kohta, mis on siis umbes pool sellest, mis tänapäeval külvatakse.
And this is actually the site. Fiskeby is actually a railway station, so that's a place. So it would be like Jogava or something like that. And Norrköping is, if we go back, how do I do that? Here you can find Norrköping, so it's quite high up in the country.
Ja need sordid on nimetatud, need katsed tehti Fiskebys ja Norrköpis, mis on kohad nagu Jõgevagi ja need on üsna kõrgel laiuskraadil.
And if we look into the same varieties in 1977 in the south part of Sweden, we noticed that we, for some varieties, get 1,900 kilograms of yield.
kui me vaatame nende samade sortide tulemusi Lõuna-Rootsis, näeme, et saagikkus võib olla isegi üle 1900 kilo.
And again we see that the number of days to maturity could be, well, 129, 120, 21, quite short period.
Samuti näete, et päevade arv, mis kulub taime küpsemiseks, on üsna lühike, umbes 120 ja 130 päeva.
Also these older experiments looked into row distances and plant stand, and this is from 1978, and we have this variety treff, and that means well, it's actually the name of the breeder, but it could also be that you are hitting something, that you are actually, when you are throwing dart and then you are hitting the bullseye, then it's a treff, then you hit it. So it's a good name. But as you can see here, seed rate 140 kilograms, 24 centimeters, 2 tons per hectare in 1978.
Siin te näete tulemusi 78. aasta kohta ja sordi kohta treff, mis on nimetatud selle aretaja järgi, aga treff tähendab rootsi keeles ka tabamust, näiteks noolemängus. Kui te tabate keskpunkti, siis on ka treff, nii et see on hea nimetus sellele sortile. Ja siin selles uuringus vaadati erinevaid näitajaid, näiteks külvise norme, mis oli 140 kilo ja reaalaiusi ning tulemus oli siis 2 tonni hektari kohta.
But as you can also see that the plants are very short, 45 centimeters, 38 centimeters, so they are roughly this high, and today plants are roughly this high.
Aga samuti näete, et taimed olid siis väga madalad, 45 ja 38 sentimeetrit, samas kui tänapäeval taimed on palju kõrgemad.
Yeah. So I would say, based on these 40-50 years old experiments, yes, we can grow soya beans in Sweden. And if we can grow it in Sweden, we can grow it in Estonia too.
Vaadates neid tulemusi 40 ja 50 aasta tagustest uuringutest, võime me öelda, et Rootsis on võimalik kasvatada sojaube ja kui see on võimalik Rootsis, on see võimalik ka Eestis.
And if we could have these high yields 40 years ago with those quite old varieties, it should be able to reach these high yields today too with modern varieties.
Kui 40 aastat tagasi oli meil vanade sortide saagikus nii kõrge, siis tänapäeval uute sortide puhul on meil võimalik kindlasti sama häid või paremaid tulemusi saavutada.
So let us compare these old results with some more modern results.
Aga võrdleme neid vanu tulemusi uuemate tulemustega.
But first we perhaps need to discuss what are we going to use the soybeans for.
Aga kõigepealt peaks võib-olla mõtlema sellele, milleks sojaube kasutada saab.
And I would say that it is mainly the dry harvest for food and for feed, of course.
Eelkõige kasutatakse seda kuiva saaki toidu ja sööda tootmiseks.
For example, ice cream from soybeans and tofu, and processing the soybeans into different meat replacements.
Näiteks saab kuivast sojast toota sojajäätist, tofut ja seda saab ka ümber töödelda lihaseaineks.
But we also work with fresh harvest, vegetable soya or edamame.
Aga samuti on teine variant koristada juba värsket soja, mis on edamame ehk siis soja kaunviljana söödavana.
And we speak both about organic and conventional production, of course.
Ja loomulikult kehtib see nii orgaanilise kui ka tavapõllumajanduse kohta.
The last years and also this year I'm actually working quite a lot. Well, I work with this vegetable soya.
Viimastel aastatel olen ma töötanud rohkem värske sojaga.
And the big difference between the vegetable soya varieties and the normal soya is that they have bigger and sweeter seeds.
Kõige suurem erinevus siis värske soja ja kuiva soja vahel on see, et värske soja seemned on suuremad ja magusamad.
It's like comparing yellow peas that you harvest dry or the peas that you harvest when they are green and then you cook them and eat them as green peas.
See on umbes sama erinevus nagu hernestel, kui te korjate need ära kuivana, kollasena või siis kui te korjate need ära värske rohelisena ja te sööte neid otse.
Yeah. And we have bought seeds from a company in the United States, Wanamaker Seeds. We have also got some seeds from Japan, but they have export restrictions for this kind of vegetable soya. So we are relying now on Wanamaker Seeds in the United States.
Me oleme ostnud seemneid siis Wanamaker Seedsilt USA-st ja samuti mõnesid Jaapani seemneid, aga Jaapanis on ekspordipiirangud, nii et eelkõige on meie ostame siis sisse USA-st seemneid.
And we have made some trials in Sweden until this year with both success and failures.
Oleme viimastel aastatel Rootsis uusi uuringuid läbi viinud, mõned neist on olnud edukamad ja mõned vähem edukad.
What we see is that the pods are ready for harvest in mid-September and roughly until now.
Meie kogemus näitab, et seemned on valmis koristamiseks alates septembri keskpaigast kuni umbes praeguseni.
And then we speak about the green, non-mature pods.
Ja siin käib jutt siis praegu nendest edamamest ehk rohelisest värskest sojast.
And we also know that these real edamame varieties, they will not mature in Sweden. They will not create a dry seed.
Ja me teame ka seda, et tõelised edamame seemned ei küpse kuivaks sojaks Rootsi tingimustes.
And they also need a very high soil temperature to actually germinate and set pods and seeds. So they are very sensitive to cold soils.
Edamame soja on väga tundlik külma mulla suhtes ja vajab idanemiseks ja kaunte kasvatamiseks sooja mulda.
And so we have this year tested 4 varieties. These Midori Giant and Chiba Green, they are real edamame varieties from the United States.
Sellel aastal oleme me katsetanud 4 erinevat soja sorti, Midori Giant ja Chiba Green USA-st, mis on kõige sellised autentsed edamame poad.
But the other ones, Bohemians and Silesia, they are from Czech Republic and they are intended for dry seeds.
Oleme katsetanud ka Bohemiansi ja Silesiat Tšehhist, mis on mõeldud kuivasoja kasvatamiseks.
But we have harvested these 2 when they still have green pods.
Ja oleme neid seda saaki koristanud siis, kui nad ei ole kuivaks sojaks küpsenud, vaid on endiselt rohelised.
And what we saw just a week ago was that the 2 American varieties, they produced pods but no seeds inside the pod.
Meie kogemus näitas, et Ameerika oad kasvatasid küll kaunad, aga need ei täitunud lubadega.
While the others, Bohemians and Silesia, they resulted in roughly 5 to 6 tons of fresh pods, including the green seeds inside.
Samas Bohemians ja Silesia saagikus oli 5 kuni 6 tonni hektari kohta ja need olid täidetud, kaunad olid täidetud lubadega.
And then we took these green pods and we boiled them and then we added some salt and we tested on at the Agricultural University 40-year jubilee a week ago.
Me võtsime korjasime ära need rohelised hoad, keetsime neid natukese soolaga ja katsetasime neid põllumajandusülikooli 40. aastapäeval.
Yeah. And those visiting, it was an open house at the university, the public in general and also scientists and so on, they actually thought that this was imported edamame pods.
Ja tegemist oli avatud uste päevadega ülikoolis, neid ube siis proovisid kõik külastajad ja ka teadlased ja teadlased arvasid, et tegemist on sisse toodud ubadega.
So, and then we used Bohemians. So I would like to say that maybe we do not need to have these real edamame varieties. Perhaps we can use ordinary soya beans for this fresh harvest.
Sellel üritusel me kasutasime Bohemians sorti ube. Nii et sellest minu mõte, et võib-olla meil ei olegi vaja konkreetset edamame tüüpi sojauba, vaid me saame kasutada tavalist sojaua tüüpi.
And they look like something like this. This is a real edamame variety from 2016. So they can produce a lot of pods if they have a warm condition.
Siin te näete 2016. aastast spetsiaalset edamame tüüpi uba ja nagu te näete, kui tingimused on head, siis nad võivad toota väga palju kangu.
But otherwise, the big difference is when you buy the seeds. To the left and to the right, we have edamame varieties, and this is a standard soybean variety. And you can see that these are much bigger in the seeds.
Aga suur erinevus on siis, kui te vaatate seemneid endid. Vasakul ja paremal on spetsiaalsed edamame tüüpi oad ja keskel on tavalised standard.
So I suppose that this could also be a new and interesting crop for some farmers. But then of course you need to have also the processing factory. They should be picked green, they should be washed, boiled and frozen.
Ma arvan, et see võiks olla väga huvitav mõnedele tootjatele, aga samas tähendab see, et on vaja ka töötlusvõimalusi, sellepärast et load on vaja roheliselt ära korjata ning kohe keeta ja neist midagi teha.
So I suppose that there are only a handful of farmers here in Estonia that might be interested in this fresh vegetable, soya. But if we go into the ordinary dry soya production, there might be many more farmers.
Ma arvan, et Eestis on võib-olla väga vähe tootjaid, kes oleks huvitatud värskete sojaubade tootmisest, aga kui me räägime kuivadest sojaubadest, siis on võib-olla huvilisi rohkem.
We have made some trials in different years with several varieties, and I took some results from a few years ago when we had a very wet and cold and bad soya year in Sweden.
Me oleme viimaste aastate jooksul erinevatel aastatel teinud katseid ja ma tõin teile näitamiseks siit mõned tulemused ühest aastast, kus meil oli Rootsis väga külm, niiske ja üldiselt halb aasta.
And this was in 2012. And that was the coldest year in Sweden since the year 2000. Very rainy, and some places got more rain than the earlier 150 years.
See oli aasta 2012, mis oli kõige külmem aasta alates 2000. aastast ja väga palju sadas vihma, mõnedes kohtades isegi rohkem kui viimase 150 aasta jooksul sadanud.
And it was a cold spring, late emergence, late maturity and late harvest.
Sellel aastal oli väga külm kevad, taimed tärkasid hilja, nad arenesid aeglaselt ja nad küpsesid ka hilja ja see põhjustas ka hilise saagikoristuse.
But still, from the island of Gotland and in organic production, we got from 1 ton up to 2 tons of yield per hectare.
Aga siiski Gotlandi saarel, kus tegeldi orgaanilise soja tootmisega, õnnestus saada 1-2 tonni soja hektari.
And at that time I got some seeds, and that was then called Sarama, now it's called Laulema. So this is from Lea.
Sellel aastal oli meil ka Saaremaa seemneid, mis on nüüd ümber nimetatud Laulema seemneteks.
And the other ones, I suppose that you know some of them. Merlin from Austria. We have Bohemians and Brunensis from Czechia. And then we have Gallic and Paradis also from Switzerland and Austria.
Ma arvan, et võib-olla te olete juba tuttavad mõnede nende sortidega. Meil on siin kasutasime Merlin sortiga, mis on Austrias, Tšehhi sortidega Brunensis ja Bohemia ning Šveitsi ja Austria sortidega Gallic ja Paradis.
Again, going back to this very wet and cold year, this is what we got directly from the field in the south part of Sweden. These soybeans are not cleansed and they are not dried, so directly from the combine.
Läheme tagasi selle külma ja niiske aasta juurde 2012. Siin on siis näha tulemusi sellest, mis me saime otse põllult. Need on töötlemiseelsed tulemused otse kombainist.
Very high yields, as you can see, 3 tons per hectare. But if we then go into what the farmer actually can sell.
Nii et toodang oli väga suur, 3 tonni hektari kohta, aga vaatame nüüd seda, mida saab tootja tegelikult müüa.
So these figures are the marketable yield, and it's corrected to a moisture of 15%.
Siin näete te näitajaid turustatava saagi kohta, kus niiskustase on viidud õigele lubatud tasemele 15%.
And we have for many different countries. We have the Ukrainian variety Anushka, which does not perform that good. We have from Czech Republic. We have from Czech Republic. Yes, that was those from Czech. Yes, perhaps you should.
Siin on siis näha Ukraina sorti Anushka, mis ei olnud väga hea tootlikkusega, ja siis erinevaid sorte Tšehhist, mis ta näitas.
But as you can see here, this old good variety Merlin, 1.9 ton.
Aga siin näete ka seda vana head sorti Merlin, mille tootlikkus oli 1,9 tonni.
So in 2012, we actually are on the same level of yield as in 1978 with these old varieties.
Nii et aastal 2012 oli meie saagikus samal tasemel kui 78. aastal nende heade sortidega.
Yes. So despite this cold summer, we got from Merlin and from Gallic roughly 1,900 kilograms.
Nii et hoolimata külmast suvest saime me nii Merlinilt kui Gallikilt sortidelt umbes 1,9 tonni saaki.
And this Paradise is of course interesting because it's very early to emerge, to grow, germinate and emerge.
Ja Paradis on samuti huvitav sort just sellepärast, et ta tärkab vara.
And these varieties are still those that we, so to speak, rely on in Sweden today. And I do hope that there are now coming some new varieties in 2018, 2019 that have at least the same yield potential as these varieties.
Me endiselt usaldame neid vanu läbiproovitud sorte Rootsis, aga ma siiski loodan, et aastatel 2018-2019 võib-olla tuleb turule uusi sorte, mille saagikus on vähemalt sama hea kui nende vanadel.
And yield is of course one important part, but also the protein content is of course very important.
Saagikus ise on loomulikult tähtis näitaja, aga samuti on tähtis proteiini valgusisaldus.
Again, some results from 2012.
Jälle mõned tulemused 2012. aastast.
And here is the protein content in percent of dry matter.
Siin te näete valgusisaldust protsendina kuivtootest.
And as you can see, one variety is more than 41%, and the others are between, well, 36 to 39% of protein.
Nagu te näete, ühe sordi proteiini valgusisaldus oli üle 41% ja teistel 36,39%.
And if you compare these results with the market expectations, I would say that we are well fulfilling what the market expects today, what I buy today. Something between 36 to 40% protein is a kind of minimum. It must be within this limit to be interesting for the market.
Kui me võrdleme neid tulemusi turu ootustega, siis ma võin kindlalt öelda, et me täidame turu ootused, sest turu ootus on minimaalselt 36–40%. Alla selle ei tasu.
But what we need to remember is that this is the protein of dry matter of the whole bean. Sometimes when a buyer speaks about protein content, they speak about it in a product, in a soybean flour or a full fat soybean flour or something like that. And then it's something different.
Aga kindlasti tuleb meeles pidada, et see protsent on protsent, valguprotsent kuivas oas ehk siis kuivas tooraines, mitte valguprotsent juba valmis olevas soja tootes, näiteks sojajahus.
If we also look into the 1,000 grain weight, how many grams do 1,000 kernels weigh? There are quite big differences, as you can see.
Samuti kui me vaatame 1000 tera kaalu, siis nagu te näete, on siin erinevused väga suured.
Some varieties are very small seeds, Anushka for example, Merlin, while other have quite big seeds, Bohemians, Silesia.
Mõned ubade suurus on üsna väike, näiteks Anushka ja Merlin, aga mõned on väga suured, näiteks Bohemia ja Silesia.
And this is also a kind of quality. What does the buyer want? Is it well, something small seeded, which means that you have a lot of hull around the seeds compared to the amount, or is it more the bigger seeds? So also the selection here is important for the farmer and then the buyer of the seeds.
Seemnete suurus on ka miski, mis mängib rolli, sest me peame mõtlema sellele, mida täpselt ostja soovib, kas ta soovib väiksemaid või suuremaid seemneid. Väiksemate puhul siis on seemnet ümbritseb kaun ja kaunasisu suurema kaaluga. Nii et seda tuleb ka tootjal meeles pidada.
So this was an example of a cold year and in the south part of Sweden with good yields. But we have more examples.
See oli siis näide külmast aastast Lõuna-Rootsis ja te nägite, et saagikus oli kõrge.
Let's go to the island of Gotland, which is closer to Estonia.
Aga vaatame nüüd Gotlandi saart, mis on Eestile lähemal.
Here we had a lot of problems with birds. A lot of damages caused by birds.
Gotlandil oli meil palju probleeme linnukahjustustega.
And only a handful of these tested varieties actually gave yields more than 1,000 kilograms per hectare.
Ja ainult mõned üksikud läbi proovitud sojaoad andsid saaki rohkem kui 1 tonn hektari.
You remember that Merlin gave roughly 1,900 kilograms in south part of Sweden. Here is barely 1 ton per hectare, barely 1,000.
Kui te mäletate, siis Merlini sort andis Lõuna-Rootsis 1900 kilo hektari kohta saaki, aga siin on see kõigest vaevu üle tonn.
And many varieties are very, very low in yield, as you can see. 5, 6, 800 kilograms per hektar.
Ja nagu te näete, siis mõned sordid andsid väga väikest saaki hektari kohta, ainult 5, 6, 800 kilo.
So I would say that these varieties that we saw earlier, Gallic, Bohemians, Merlin, are, even if they have a lower yield, they are still the better varieties.
Nii et ütleksin, et need sordid, mida ma ka enne mainisin, Gallic, Bohemians ja Merlin, isegi kui nende saavutus on väiksem, on see siiski kokkuvõttes selle piirkonna kohta suurem.
Yes, and this is just to summarize what I actually said.
Ja siin te siis näete kokkuvõtet sellest, mis ma just ütlesin.
But the harvest time were quite late.
Aga saagikoristusaeg jäi üsna hiliseks.
It's well, starting in October until the 24th of October. I mean, we have a weather like this in October in Sweden too.
Nii et saaki oli võimalik koristada alates 10. oktoobrist kuni oktoobri lõpuni ja meil Rootsis on samasugune ilm nagu teil Eestis oktoobri lõpus, nii et ma ei käisa.
So it means that if you have a cold year and even if you choose a good variety, yield can be very late.
Nii et see tähendab, kui on tegemist külma aastaga, isegi kui ta valib hea saagikusega sordi, võib see saak jääda väga hiliseks.
And now some pictures just to show how soybeans can look at different stages. This is in early June.
Siin näete erinevaid pilte, kuidas sojaavad välja erinevatel etappidel aastas.
Well, that was, yes. And this is in September, how it looks like. As you can see, the leaves have fallen.
Siin näete, kuidas näevad välja septembris, näete lehed on alla kukkunud.
And this is how it should look like. And these plants are, of course, very. They have a very stiff plant. They don't lodge. They don't fall to the ground, and the pods are also very well attached to the plant.
Selline peaks siis taim välja nägema ja sojaaad on väga tugevad taimed, ehk siis nad ei lange maha ja ka kaunad on väga tugevasti kinnitanud taimekülg.
So when you reach this stage, there is they can stand in this kind of stage for several weeks without anything happening.
Kui oad jõuavad sellisesse staadiumisse, võivad nad selles olla mitu nädalat ja midagi ei juhtu nendega.
But what we also see is that there is a big difference between maturity time. Here we have two extreme examples.
Aga tahan ka välja tuua, et küpsemise aeg on väga erinev. Näiteks siin näete kahte äärmuslikku näidet.
The Czech variety Silesia, still green.
Tšehhi sort Silesia on endiselt roheliste lehtedega.
While this Canadian variety that has no name is completely mature.
Aga see nimetu Kanada sort on juba täiesti valmis.
But you also notice the difference in height. This is perhaps 40-45 centimeters, and this one is more than a meter, 100-120 centimeters.
Siin näete ka väga suurt erinevust kõrguse vahel. Parempoolne on kuskil 40-45 centimeetrit, kui vasakpoolne on meeter 20.
So it means that this is mature, but could be more difficult to harvest.
See tähendab, et parempoolne sort on küll küps, aga selle koristamine võib olla keerulisem.
You need to have a good soil surface and a combine that actually can go very close to the soil surface.
see tähendab, et põllupind peab olema väga tugev ja peab olema teil kombain, mis saab väga põllu lähedalt poisida.
Yes, and also again differences between varieties, Silesia, Bohemians and this very early variety.
Siin näete veel ühte näidet küpsemise eri staadiumite kohta, Silesia, Bohemia ja siis see varajane kanakasvart.
So what we of course need to look into in Sweden as well as in Estonia is that we need to have early maturity and we need to have early emergence also under cool soil conditions.
Mida on meil siis vaja nii Rootsis kui siin Eestis? Meil on vaja ube, mis küpseksid varakult ja samuti ube, mis tärkaksid vara ka külma mulla tingimustes.
And of course there must be pods even during a cool summer season. And of course it's important with high protein and high yield.
Samuti on vaja sorti, mis kasvataks ja hoiaks kaunad küljes isegi külma suve tingimustes. Ja loomulikult sorti, mis sisaldaks palju valku ja oleks raagikas.
So the breeders have a big challenge for the Nordic Baltic countries.
Aretajate jaoks on Baltikum ja Põhjariigid väga keeruline väljakutse.
And that's why we so far would say that Bohemians, Brunensis, Merlin, these varieties are suitable for Swedish conditions.
Seepärast ma ütleksin, et Bohemia, Brunensis, Merlin ja teised mainitud sordid sobivad Rootsi tingimustesse.
But as you can see, there is a Estonian variety too. We have one Anser, we have Viola from Austria, we have Augusta also from Poland. Why do I look at this Anser?
Siin on siis toodud veel mõned sordid, mis on sobilikud ja nagu te näete, on siin ka üks Eesti sort ja siis on Viola Austriast ja Augusta Poolast, aga miks ma toon välja praegu Anseri, mis te arvate?
Yes. Well, it's because that this variety is very good to make ice cream, soybean ice cream.
Sest see on väga hea sort sojajäätise tootmiseks.
So we are at the moment trying, there is a Swedish company doing soybean ice cream and they have so far used this variety, but they are looking for something that they can grow in Sweden, maybe Scandinavian countries that is similar to that one and have the same good taste for ice cream.
Rootsis on praegu üks firma, mis toodab just sellest Anseri sortist jäätist, aga nad otsivad mingit sorti, mis oleks võib-olla veel sobilikum Rootsi tingimustele, aga mille maitse oleks sama hea jäätise tootmisel.
We have typically got about 2 tons per hectare. That is what we would like to achieve.
Meil on enamasti saagikus 2 tonni hektari kohta ja see on meie üldine eesmärk ka, mis me tahame alati saavutada.
And we have looked in different row distances, of course. The normal one for wheat, barley and so on is 12.5. That works quite well in conventional soya bean cropping too.
Samuti oleme mõelnud reavahedele, tüüpiline reavahe 12,5 cm, mida kasutatakse tavapõllumajanduses, näiteks nisu ja kaara puhul sobib ka sojavaale.
And in organic farming we prefer 25 or 50 centimeters so we can go with different mechanical methods to control the weeds.
Aga orgaanilises põllumajanduses, mahepõllumajanduses eelistame me reavahet 25-50 centimeetrit, et meil oleks võimalik erinevate mehaaniliste seadmetega umbrohutõrjet teostada.
And I think, and that is just a guess, so to speak, but a scientific guess, that it's very good to have a bigger row distance when it's cold and wet, to have more sunlight and wind into the stand of the plants.
Minu teaduslik arvamus on, et külmades ja niisketes tingimustes oleks hea kasutada suuremaid reavahesid selleks, et rohkem päikest ja rohkem tuult jõuaks taimedeni.
When are we going to seed then? Well, we call this early seeding. I know that Danube Soy would probably call it a late seeding, but this is an early seeding for us. I would say that this is some kind of a recommended seeding date to perform well. But we do know that the plants can actually tolerate at least some frost for some hours without being killed.
Millal siis soja külvata? Meie jaoks Rootsis on varajane külvamine, tähendab umbes 5. maid või mai lõppu. Mõne teise riigi jaoks see kindlasti tähendaks hilist külvi, aga meie jaoks mai on varajane külv. Aga samas me teame, et soja kannatab ka välja paari külmakraadi, ilma et taimed häviksid.
So to conclude, yes, we can grow modern non-genetically modified soybean cultivars in Sweden.
Kokkuvõtteks siis võin öelda, et Rootsis on võimalik kasvatada GMO-vabasid moodsaid sojakube.
And we must be aware that a cold and rainy summer will lower yields to perhaps 1 ton per hectare if we are unlucky.
Oleme tõestanud, et külmad ja vihmased suved vähendavad saagikust umbes 1 tonnini hektari kohta.
Yeah. You should of course choose warm, sunny areas, warm soils for this kind of production, dry places, not the wet field in the forest.
Samuti teame, et meil tuleks sojaubade kasvatamiseks valida päikselised ja kuivad kohad, kindlasti mitte mõni metsavaheline niiske põld.
If you inoculate with Rhizobium japonicum, then you don't need to use nitrogen, because then you have this nitrogen fixation ability. I have been using this kind of fresh inoculum with good success.
Kui te töötlete soja Rhizobium japonicumiga, siis teil ei ole vaja kasutada lämmastikku. Ja mina olengi näiteks kasutanud seda värsket Rhizobium japonicumi väga edukalt.
And do not seed too early. Avoid compacted soils. 25 centimeters row spacing, I would say, is a good choice.
Ärge külvake liiga vara. Vältige sellist tihedat kõva pinnast ja kasutage reavahet 25 centimeetrit.
Weed control is very important.
Väga oluline on umbrohutõrje.
Ordinary thistle, Chenopodium album, Solanum nigrum, Limus repens, those kind of perennial weeds, they must be controlled.
Väga oluline on tõrjuda umbrohtusid nagu Cirsium, Chenopodium, Solanum nigrum ja teised.
And also oilseed rape from previous years can be a very big problem in soybeans.
Samuti võib sojaubadele väga halvasti mõjuda õliraps, mida on seal eelmisel aastal näiteks kasvatatud seal samal põllul.
And it's not Brazil, but I'm at least standing in the huge fields of soybeans on the island of Öland on my soybean safari a few years ago.
Kahjuks ei ole see pilt küll Brasiiliast, aga siiski see on üks tore pilt minust, kus ma seisan oma suure soja põllu peal. See on Ölandi saarel paar aastat tagasi.
So it should be nice and warm and sunny to grow soya beans.
Nii et sojaubade kasvatamiseks peaks ilm olema ilus ja soe.
And if there are questions and if you like to contact me, please do that. Telephone, email address, you can also write a letter, of course, to me.
Kui teil on veel mõni